Alright guys, so we have an incredibly sad but interesting story involving self-defense coming out of Lubbock, Texas, as a man unfortunately lost his life trying to gain custody of his kids from his ex-wife, right? Now, before I get in this situation, I gotta really break down all the people involved in the situation because it's kind of confusing. So before we really get into what happened, I want you guys to understand each of the people involved in the situation and who they are so that we get a clear understanding of the situation. Now, this story involves mainly 4 people, okay? The 2 main characters are Carruth and Chad Reed. Now, Chad Reed is the father that is seeking custody of his sons from Miss Christina Reed, who is currently the girlfriend of Mr. Carruth. Okay, so Chad Reed shows up to the property of Carruth and Christina Reed to get custody of his sons based off judge's orders. Now, during the process of this happening, Chad Reed gets in an argument with Christina Reed, right? And they go back and forth about why he can't get access to his sons.
Get off of my property. I'll go get him. I'm supposed to have him at 3:15. And you're playing games telling me that I can pick him up at 6? I'm going to have the cops. I've already got the cops on the way to your mom's house. Because that's probably where he is. It's not when I'm done working. I get him at 3:15. I get him at 3:15. I don't care if you wanted to see him or not. I get him at 3:15. If you want to see him, you see him up until 3:15.
Christina Reed is basically saying that the kids are not home and she didn't abide by the court orders because she wanted to see their son, right? So this makes Mr. Chad Reed upset, okay? And during this argument, they tell him and his current wife, Jennifer Reed, they tell them to leave the property, right? However, he won't leave the property because he wants to see his sons. He wants custody of his sons, right? So Mr. Carruth, again, the boyfriend of Christina Reed, the ex-wife of Chad Reed, goes and gets his weapon, right, his shotgun, out of his house, and again, tells Mr. Chad Reed to leave the property. However, Mr. Chad Reed refuses to do so, and in the course of the argument, he tells Mr. Carruth that he'll take his gun. He tries to actually grab Carruth's gun, his weapon, to take it from him. He fails to do so, basically spinning around Carruth in the process. And as Carruth is spinning out, right, and get back into position, Mr. Chad Reed then tries to basically, step up further to Mr. Carruth, and at that point, Carruth shoots Mr. Chad Reed dead on the spot, right, with his shotgun. So Mr. Carruth here is claiming self-defense, and the family of Chad Reed, Miss Jennifer Reed, who recorded the video, released the video, is claiming that it was murder, right? So I want you guys to understand the situation. So without further ado, I actually want you guys to watch the news clip of what happened so that you guys can get a better understanding of the situation. Take a look.
Well, nearly 3 weeks of investigation leads us to tonight, when we can witness all that we've been wondering. What happened when Carruth fatally shot Chad Reed on November 5th? Matthew Harris, the attorney for Chad Reed's widow, Jennifer Reed, tells us the family wants to end the speculation and show the public exactly what happened. Carruth's lawyer also giving us his own video from another perspective, saying he believes it supports their claim of self-defense. Now, we're going to show you both videos side by side now so that you can make sense of the facts and the fallout from that day. And we will warn you, though, some of what you're about to see is graphic.
From you and
this is on video. Get off of the property.
Where's my son?
Breaking this Wednesday, we witnessed the shooting that spurred questions and controversy across West Texas. The victim's widow and the shooter's attorney sharing their perspective of when Kyle Carruth fatally shot Chad Reed on November 5th.
This is on video.
Call 911. Call 911. Call 911. Call 911.
I'm recording it. Oh my God.
LPD investigated the incident and did not press charges, but Chad's widow, Jennifer Reed, says Kyle should be charged with murder. Also breaking, Jennifer petitioning for full custody of Chad's children from their mother, Christina Reed, saying in an affidavit obtained Wednesday, Christina has endangered the physical and emotional well-being of the children by permitting them to be in the presence of the man that murdered their father. Kyle's attorney, David Gwynn, also telling us Wednesday he believes this video supports the claim of self-defense, telling us all Texans may lawfully brandish a firearm to protect themselves. Careful study of the video showed Kyle's gun was brandished but never pointed at Reed. It was only after Mr. Reed said, "I'll take your gun," slinging him across the patio like a scarecrow, then stepped toward him, that Mr. Carruth pointed the gun at Mr. Reed. Because of their knowledge of all the facts and the Texas Castle Doctrine, LPD knew this was a justifiable homicide. Our hopes are that a Lubbock grand jury will do a thorough investigation of all the facts and will clear Mr. Carruth. That investigation is still pending in the Texas Attorney General's office. And it's in the Attorney General's office because the Lubbock County District Attorney's office recused itself, citing Kyle's ongoing divorce from State District Judge Anne Marie Carruth. That's what we know so far, and of course we'll keep you updated with the latest as we learn it at everythinglubbock.com.
All right, guys, so you see that, you heard that, and I hope you guys have a thorough understanding of the situation. Now, the whole point of this video is to discuss whether or not this is self-defense, in my opinion on it. Now, I think that there's a common sense explanation, right, of whether or not this is self-defense, and then there's also like the legal aspect. And I think we've kind of seen, especially when it comes to the whole Ahmaud Arbery thing, there's a difference between a common sense perspective and the actual legal perspective, okay? So I think people got to keep that in mind. And from a common sense perspective, I would just say right off the bat, I think this is self-defense. Okay, and I think it's an unfortunate case of self-defense because, you know, a man not being able to see his sons, right, that can infuriate any man and make him act crazy, okay? But at the same time, Mr. Chad Reed was on Mr. Kyle Carruth's property, and, you know, he was trying to grab Mr. Kyle Carruth's gun, which he lawfully had out. Okay, he tried to grab it. He threatened him, and at that point, in my opinion, because he tried to grab the gun and take the gun and potentially use the gun against Mr. Kyle Carruth, Mr. Kyle Carruth can say, hey, I felt like my life was in danger, right? And I felt like he would be justified to feel that way and to, you know, at that point, unfortunately have to use his weapon, okay? That's how I feel about it from a common sense perspective. However, let's actually take a look at what the lawyer of Mr. Kyle Carruth is saying as well in order to back up their claims of self-defense. He says, quote, all Texans may lawfully brandish a firearm to protect themselves, their property, and their business, he said. When Kyle did that, Chad Reed advanced on him, and simultaneously he tried to take the gun away from Kyle. In doing so, he was powerful enough to sling Kyle 180 degrees around on Kyle's patio. Raising his left leg, he was continuing to advance on Kyle, threatening him and posing an immediate threat. Kyle responded, this is a justifiable homicide. The lawyer praised the Lubbock Police Department's handling of the case. It is my opinion, because of their knowledge of all the facts in the Texas Castle Doctrine and having done a thorough job, LPD knew this was a justifiable homicide, he said. They knew they lacked probable cause and did not arrest him. I'm sure this and other information will be provided to a Lubbock County grand jury for further review. Kyle cooperated with law enforcement. Our hopes are that a Lubbock grand jury will do a thorough investigation of all the facts and will clear Carruth. He added that everyone regrets the entire situation. Though Reed came unarmed, he announced his intent to kill Kyle Carruth with Kyle's own gun and took immediate action to do so, he said. Quote, it was unsuccessful. Careful study of the video shows Kyle's gun was brandished but never pointed at Reed. It was only after Reed said, I'll take your gun, and slinging him across the patio like a scarecrow, then stepped toward him, that Kyle pointed the gun at Reed. All right, so I think that the lawyer's explanation there is pretty sound in my opinion. You know, he's obviously given a legal perspective here. I'm giving a common sense perspective because I'm not a lawyer, right? And speaking of lawyers, when it comes to this legal stuff, I do like to give you guys a lawyer's explanation of Texas's castle doctrine so that you guys get an understanding of, you know, what the law says and, you know, in what cases is self-defense and the use of a deadly weapon in self-defense justified. So without further ado, I want you guys to take a look at this video so that you guys can understand legally how this works.
This is Texas, and we love our guns in Texas. But when can you pull a firearm out and use it to protect yourself, your property, your business, or someone within your home? Let's talk about when a person can use self-defense, and particularly when a person can use deadly force to defend themselves. In very general terms, your use of force needs to be measured to counter the force that's being used against you. So for instance, if someone comes up to you and balls up their fist to strike you, or does in fact strike you, then you can certainly use your fist to hit them back. However, generally speaking, you're not going to be able to increase the level of force. So if someone comes at you with their fist balled up or punches you, you can't pull out a knife and stab them. When we're talking about the use of deadly force, the general premise is you can use deadly force to defend yourself against another person's unlawful use of deadly force. As you're considering whether or not the use of force is appropriate, understand that ultimately a judge or jury is going to be looking at the reasonability of your actions. Also understand that there are certain presumptions that can protect you when you use force or deadly force. For instance, when a person is entering your property using force, so the dynamic has changed from simply criminally trespassing to now they're trying to break in a door, they're trying to break in a window, or they have. Well, there's a presumption that your use of deadly force is in fact reasonable to try to keep them out or to get them out of your property. So let's break that down a little bit. What if someone is criminally trespassing on your property? Is that enough to use deadly force? Well, generally speaking, that's not enough. Simply seeing someone who has encroached your property and is doing nothing more is not enough for you to actually use deadly force. You are, however, allowed to use the threat of deadly force. So you could threaten them. You could actually pull out a handgun, point at them, and say, you need to get off my property now. You can't actually use deadly force under those circumstances. Now let's change that situation a little bit. Let's say the person has entered your property or is attempting to enter your property with force. So now, instead of a person entering your front yard or your property, let's say they're at your door and they're trying to get inside your house by force, or they're breaking a window trying to get in. Well, at that point, you can use deadly force to protect yourself and anyone else who's within the home. The same applies to your place of work and to your vehicle. In Texas, whether or not you have a license to carry, you're allowed to have a firearm in your home or in your vehicle, or transport that handgun from your vehicle to your car or your car back to your vehicle. Similarly, at your place of business, if someone tries to make forceful entry, you are allowed to use deadly force to protect yourself. So if you're an employee, let's say a security guard, and you've been placed at a particular location for the company, that's your place of employment, and you can use deadly force to prevent the entry of another if they are entering unlawfully. The presumption that exists about the reasonableness of the use of deadly force in self-defense also changes based on the time of day. At night, a person can use deadly force to protect themselves against a greater number of offenses. For instance, if someone's on your property and you believe they're there to commit an offense like criminal mischief, destruction of property, arson, or enter your property to commit some sort of violent offense, you can use deadly force to defend yourself.
All right, guys, so that is Mr. Benson Vargas from Vargas Somerset PLLC. I want to make sure I give him credit for that explanation, okay, in regards to Texas's castle doctrine in self-defense. Now, to me, based off what he said and the things I've read, it seems like what it's going to come down to is whether or not you believe that Mr. Chad Reed had used deadly force basically against Mr. Kyle Carruth when he tried to grab Mr. Kyle Carruth's gun, because up until the point in which he actually grabbed Kyle Carruth's gun, Kyle Carruth could not have shot him, right? Even though technically it seems to me that Mr. Chad Reed was trespassing after they told him to leave the property multiple times and he refused to do so. That's not enough. He wasn't really breaking in anything. He wasn't really committing any type of burglary or anything like that, in which if he was, apparently you can use force at that point, but he wasn't doing that. He was just there. And words are not enough to justify shooting him. It really comes down to whether or not you believe that Mr. Chad Reed had used deadly force against Mr. Kyle Carruth by attempting to grab and take away his gun, while, I mean, at the same time threaten him as well, and then proceeding to try to attack him again after trying to take his gun, right? And do you believe that at that point Mr. Ray Carruth did a reasonable thing, which is to shoot him at that point because his life was in danger? That to me seems like what it comes down to, right? And it seems to me that the police not charging Mr. Kyle Carruth with anything up until this point kind of shows that they kind of agree with the lawyer on this, and that this was self-defense and that what he did was lawful, right? So again, I think from a common sense perspective, it's self-defense. Now, from a legal perspective, again, I really don't know, right? Because I know how technical these things can get and how nuanced these things can get. But to me, I would think that if somebody's trying to take away my weapon while at the same time threatening me while taking away my weapon that I legally had out at the time because this person was trespassing, right? If they try to take that weapon at that point, I think they're attempting to use deadly force against me, right? Because if they grab my weapon, right, and they take it, then my life is now, in danger, okay? And furthermore, I do think that it's very, very, very unfortunate that Mr. Chad Reed lost his life in the way he did, trying to get custody of his sons. However, I think in a situation like that, I get how your emotions can be high. However, you still have to have a cool, calm, and collective head in a situation like that and just let law enforcement handle it, right? From a common sense perspective, you really shouldn't be confronting somebody that has a gun pulled out on you, right? It's probably best for you not to do that, okay? And just to, fall back, let the police handle it, and go from there. I think that would have been the best way for him to handle that situation that could have avoided him losing his life. So, hey, I mean, that's kind of my thoughts on it. I really want to know you guys' thoughts on this. So let me know in the comment section. Do you think that this was self-defense, or do you think that Mr. Kyle Carruth committed murder by shooting Mr. Chad Reed, despite Mr. Chad Reed allegedly being unarmed? But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.